Well, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I'm that Scottish nerd that brings you Pokemon TCG content, so if that's something that interests you and you want to see more, be sure to hit the subscribe down below so that you can see my future videos, as I do upload multiple times a week. But in this video, we have Theme Deck Tuesday, where I take a theme deck, review it, and see how it stacks up against the other theme decks in the meta. As always, there are timestamps down below in the description if you want to jump past the deck review and get straight into the matches. Let's have a look at the deck itself then. We have the Galarian Sirfetch'd here. Of course, this is the star of the show, and we have to go over its attacks. It has Pierce for 1 energy, does deal 40 damage. Can be nice for just efficiently taking out low HP Pokemon, but the main attack that we're here for is Meteor Assault for 3 energy, deals 180 damage, and then we can't use this attack during the following turn. So it can be nice because 180 damage is going to be knocking out near enough every Pokemon in Theme Deck format. The only thing that you're not getting a knockout on is the Rillaboom Theme Deck, and Rillaboom as a Pokemon, it does have 190 HP, so just missing a knockout on that, but everything else you're completely knocking out in one hit, and that's pretty reasonable considering this is a stage 1 Pokemon. So 3 energy for 180 is not bad at all. We do get a 3-3 line of the Sirfetch'd and Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd here doesn't have the best stats overall, but for 1 energy you can potentially do 40 damage, so could be reasonable, but again, not the best. The main note here is that it does have 80 HP, so 80 HP basic, pretty powerful. Moving on though, as you can see we do have a lot of Pokemon. I won't go through every single one and bore you with that, I'll just show off some of the highlights. One of them being the Dug Trio here. We have a 2-2 Dug Trio line, and with Dig for 1 energy, you're able to flip a coin, and if heads, during your opponent's next turn you prevent all damage and effects of damage done to this Pokemon. So very strong, as well as dealing 30 damage for just the 1 energy cost. Very efficient, and if you're lucky and you're able to get a whole bunch of heads, then this is definitely going to win you games, or at least save you in certain situations so that you can attach energy onto your benched Pokemon. So very good in that sense. And then we also have the couple of Sudowoodo here. This is the next thing, as it does have the double draw, allowing you to draw 2 cards. And then Flail is always a nice deterrent against Pokemon from attacking you, because then you're going to be dealing damage based on the damage that they deal to Sudowoodo, but mainly that double draw comes in clutch. Moving on here, we have the Passimians with Call for Family, as well as the Stonejourner, probably being one of the main attackers as well. It is a very high attack cost, but if you're able to get 4 energy, you deal 120, and if you have an additional energy on here, you're also dealing 180. And considering this is a basic Pokemon, that is a lot of damage to be dealing. The downside is that you do have to have a lot of energy, and that is a theme with this deck. All of the Pokemon's attack costs, the lowest and big attack on Sirfetch'd with the 3 energy for 180, that is your main go-to attack, but everything else is 3, 4 energy costs or 5 energy costs on the Stonejourner. It's just not very efficient for keeping up with the current theme decks in the meta right now. And of course the other main attacker that we do need to look at is the Hippowdon, as it's got some very good attacks actually. For 3 energy you flip 3 coins, 80 for each, and the odds are that you're going to be dealing at least 80, but for the most part you're often being able to deal 160, which is enough to knock out a lot of Pokemon, as well as just dealing that consistent 150. If you need to just have a consistent number, then that is an option as well. In terms of energy acceleration, we have Bead as well as the Turbo Patch, so we do have some acceleration, but overall you're going to be drawing a lot of Pokemon and not a whole lot of energy for the most part, which is a bit of a downside considering we really need energy in this deck to actually get going. And the supporters and trainers are pretty standard for this era of theme deck, as we've seen in previous weeks. The only difference this time around being is we have 2 copies of Birdkeeper. This is to counteract the fact that we have to switch out when we use Meteor Assault on Sirfetch'd, since we can't use it on our following turn. So using a Birdkeeper and then a switch, we can reuse that Meteor Assault attack. And then we also have a couple of copies of Pokemon Catcher, Typically, I really don't like this card since it is, again, a coin flip, but if you are able to get lucky and get a heads-on Pokemon catcher, it can really swing a match in your favour, and you're able to take out a Pokemon that your opponent is building up on the bench. So yeah, as I've said, overall, just a very slow deck with the energy costs that it has, but some of the attacks I do really like since it is very high damage for some of these basic Stage 1 Pokemon. Let's get into a couple of matches with it, show off how the deck works and how it stacks up against other theme decks. Be sure to give this video a like if you do enjoy it at any point as well, as it really helps me out. Starting us off in our first match, we are up against the Soaring Storm Dragonite deck, and we definitely did not have a good starting Pokemon here with the Hippopotas. It is a very high attack cost Pokemon, so we're not going to be able to get a whole lot going on here with the amount of energy we're going to have to be attaching, as well as our opening hand being pretty abysmal, and we don't really have a lot of options for our supporters, just the Sonia being able to get 2 basic Pokemon, which I suppose we can make use of here, as we do have a couple of energy available to us. I'll certainly take the Sudowoodo in case we get something like a switch in order to go into that, and also taking the Diglett since I do really like the Dug Trio in this deck. Has a fantastic attack that we can make use of, so I'm going to keep attaching onto our active, and we can at least start dealing some damage. Since my opponent's active is weak to fighting, we're going to be dealing 20 damage here, and then on the following turn we can evolve into the Hippowdon, and with the 3 energy attached onto it, we're going to be able to deal a little bit of damage. Well, I say a little bit, it should be getting knocked out as long as we get 1 heads on the Hippopotas, or the Hippowdon. I always get them 2 mixed up, but hey ho, my opponent is getting the evolutions down, and they're going to be working towards the Dragonite here. As always, that is the main, almost mini objective of the Soaring Storm deck, is to get towards that Dragonite as quickly as possible, as well as just drawing as many cards as possible. So we see here my opponent gets the Dragonair, and then they're going to go and draw 2 cards with the Alolan Grimer, of course. So we can evolve into our Hippowdon, as I said, and we're going to be attaching energy. I think I will go with this Pokemon Catcher actually, because if we get a heads here, this is going to be huge if we can take a knockout on this Dragonair. Unfortunately, we do get Tails, so we're not able to get an early knockout and take out the Dragonair before it becomes a Dragonite. We are just going to have to settle with getting a knockout on this Alolan Grimer. We do get 2 heads, we only needed the 1, and the odds are in our favour considering we are flipping 3 coins, so we have a reasonable chance of getting enough damage in order to get the knockout. My opponent does have the Dragonite in their hand, so they're able to evolve up here, and that is going to get them the knockout since they only need to attach 2 energy, and both of those energy are going to be coming from the ability on Dragonite here, and then also attaching a 5th energy for the following turn since they do have to discard 3 energy from the Dragonite here when they use the attack, but dealing 170 damage is going to get a knockout on our Hippowdon, and then we don't really have a backup attacker from here. We're just going to be forced to go into the Sudowoodo and use that double draw in order to start drawing some cards and hopefully get into some energy to get into a new attacker. So this is certainly going to be a big setback for us. We'll at least get the hop off of the prizes so we can draw 3 from that and see how we go. We even have the Turbo Patch, although it is going to rely on us getting a heads, so we'll just have to see how the cards go for us. I think we could put this down as well, put down the Hippopotas, so that if we get a heads here, doesn't matter, we just get a tails, but we would have attached onto the Hippopotas because we might as well. I mean, it's a reasonable attacker if we can get the energy onto it. Just deciding here, I think I'm going to want to take the Dug Trio. As I mentioned, it's a very good attacker with that first attack, Dig. Being able to prevent all damage on a coin flip is very strong in the theme deck meta, although you do have to be lucky and actually get the heads in order to prevent that damage. But hey, if you're lucky and you can get those coin flips in your favour, then you're going to be sorted. So here we go, we're going to draw 2 cards with our Sudowoodo. Let's see what we get into. We get another Pokemon as well as another supporter, although Supporter is not going to be super useful right now since we only have 1 energy, and of course Bead does accelerate energy, so only having 1 in hand is not going to be very useful. But my opponent is going to be able to get another knockout here if they have the energy. I'm guessing they will, since it is a theme deck and they typically do have plenty of energy in their hand, but you never know, they might have a bad draw here and they've only got Pokemon, or they only have trainers, something along those lines. But no, never mind. We see the ability coming from Dragonite that is going to be accelerating the 2 energy required onto itself, and then they're also going to be attaching onto the bench and powering up that Tornadus in the back there so that they can attack with something that isn't going to discard 3 energy every single turn. So there is the knockout from my opponent, taking our Sudowoodo out of the game. We're going to be forced, I think we're going to be putting up our Doug trio here, and like I said, forced to try and hope that we get some good coin flips and pull it out of the bag here. We can just put down this Farfetch'd, always called a Sirfetch'd, but it's not quite a Sir just yet. And then we're going to go for the Professor's Research in order to draw a fresh hand and get us into some more energy cards that we really desperately needed there. We do get a Pokemon Catcher that we can make use of at some point. There's not really anything that I want to pull up right now though, as I would really like my opponent to actually retreat their active, so that would make them use up energy cards, and even if they go for the attack with Dragonite, then that's going to force more energy out of them as well. Unfortunately, we did get the tails on Dig, so my opponent can deal damage and get a knockout on our Dog Trio. Really was hoping for the heads there so that we could actually prevent some damage and prevent my opponent from getting the knockout. But we see here my opponent going for the Airmail and then using Pokemon Fan Club. I really think the Fan Club should come first, because then you're going to be thinning your deck and getting a better Airmail. But hey, if that's what my opponent wants to do, that's up to them, that's their call. And they see the Dragonite coming out of the deck from our opponent, and their bench is now full, so they're not able to bench any more Pokemon. And then we also see the Dragonite's ability coming down once again, attaching onto itself, as well as that 4th energy manually attached, so they're able to deal 170 and get the knockout once again. As you can see, this deck, the Sirfetch'd deck, is just so slow compared to the top tier decks in the theme deck meta. It's very unfortunate, but there's not really anything that we can do about it. I think we'll promote our little Sirfetch'd here, and we might as well deal a little bit of damage and tickle the Dragonite at least, I suppose. Our other option is switching. I mean, we could switch and try and hope that we get enough energy on, but there's no way that we're going to be able to swing this game back in our favour. Go with the Pokemon Catcher here, maybe stall our opponent. Sure, they're accelerating the energy, but maybe they just don't get enough energy. How about that? So let's bring up the Lantern here, or the Chinchou I should say. Now we also have the Bird Keeper that we could switch into, or we could hit in with our Sirfetch'd. You know, let's do that. Let's just take a prize card. Then at least we've taken 2 prize cards throughout this match, and we can at least be proud of ourselves for taking 2 prize cards, because 2 is more than 1. So we'll go with that. Our opponent promotes the Tornadus, and yeah, there's no way that we're going to be able to keep up with the Dragonite deck, as they're just far too consistent and they have the energy acceleration. That's one of the main setbacks for the Sirfetch'd deck, is that there's just no way of accelerating energy to keep up with these kinds of decks. Even the Charizard deck from a Vivid Voltage, that doesn't have any acceleration for energy, but it is able to draw and be very consistent, which allows it to be competitive within this meta. But all of these other decks which do accelerate energy, sure, we have the Turbo Patch, maybe you get lucky and flip heads on some of those, but overall it's not going to end well for us. There's the attack from the Tornadus. It's not quite doing enough to get a knockout on us. We do have 130 hit points, so we could survive here, even if we let them knock out something else. That could be good, since we can power up our Sirfetch'd here. So let's go with that. We'll Bird Keeper, And we'll go into the Hippowdon, I think, or Hippopotas, and we'll attach energy onto our Sirfetch'd that we just switched here. We get another Hippopotas. We have the Stonejourner as well. These are some good Pokemon, but like I keep saying, these attack costs are just way too high. The fact that we need 5 energy on our Stonejourner here just to deal 180 damage. I mean, sure, that is a lot of damage. You're going to be knocking out everything, but the fact that you need 5 energy to do that is just too much in order to keep up with these decks like Dragonite and some of the other decks as well. Even the Rillaboom deck, you're going to struggle against that because of weakness and they can accelerate energy. So yeah, not a good time for us whatsoever. We can promote our Sirfetch'd once again, and we can at least use our secondary attack here, Meteor Assault, in order to deal 180 damage, and we at least get a third knockout, taking out the Tornadus and taking our third prize card. So we are somewhat keeping up with our opponent considering they're only one prize card ahead of us, but their board state is a lot better than ours, as they can easily just come in here with any Pokemon really and get the knockout. We only have 30 HP remaining, and we have our benched Farfetch'd, which they could spread more damage onto as well if they get the Tornadus. They are going to be promoting the Dragonite here, or Dragonair I should say. Dragonite, Dragonair, Dratini, one of them. They're all dragons, you get the gist of it. So they promoted the Dratini here. They're probably going to be using the ability to get free retreat on it, or perhaps they have a switch that they could make use of. And they're just looking to find an attacker, I'm guessing. So yep, they attach the water energy, which provides free retreat, and then they can retreat into the Thundurus here, as well as putting that second energy on, which is going to allow them to deal the 20 damage. So it's not quite enough here, as we do have 30 HP remaining, but they get the Tornadus there, which increases their damage on the Thundurus up to 70 when Tornadus is on the bench. So they are getting the knockout on us. We're not really going to have much of a response on this, unfortunately. We just have our Farfetch'd here. It does deal 10 damage and potentially on a coin flip could deal 40. Even with the weakness, we're only going up to 80 at that point. And then my opponent only has to take this one final knockout. So not really anything that we can do about this, and we don't have another attacker which we can make use of. We do have a couple of basic Pokemon, but yeah, there's no point in picking any of these down because my opponent only has the one prize card remaining. Even if we went into the other Farfetch'd, like we benched this one that's in our hand, switched and did all this extra stuff, my opponent only needs to attach this one energy as they just did, and that is going to deal the 120 damage to get the knockout, and my opponent takes the game. So we're fortunate to be able to take 3 prize cards, but there's no way that we can ever keep up with some of these top tier decks. We're opening our next match here with the Sudowoodo, which is definitely the preferred starter. Of course the Passimian is good as well, but overall I just prefer drawing cards, and we are going first, so there's not a whole lot we can do other than attach energy. We're up against the Necrozma and Malamar theme deck, so unfortunately our Sirfetch'd isn't going to be doing a whole lot because it is weak to Psychic. Although to be fair, they are going to be dealing a lot of damage overall, since they deal extra damage when they have a special energy attached. They deal a total of 160 damage. So either way, our Pokemon would be getting knocked out regardless of weakness. So I think we will work towards actually getting the Sirfetch'd into play regardless. And we do also have the double Sonia start here as well, so we can get out all of our basic Pokemon here. So I'm definitely going to be playing this down, and we'll see what we have available. I think obviously getting the Farfetch'd is going to be crucial if we want to actually evolve into the Sirfetch'd, and then also getting a Diglett, because as I mentioned before, I do really like the Dugtrio in this deck. Just being able to have the option to try and stall at the very least is going to be a big option for us. We might as well go ahead and put down the Hippopotas, why not? Well, Great Ball here, so we can get into. We have the Hippowdon. Don't really want these other two Pokemon, so we'll take the Hippowdon for now. and we can even attach an energy. I think we'll put it onto the Farfetch'd. Since we do have the Sirfetch'd in hand, it makes the most sense to go there. And then we'll just go for the double draw here on Pseudo Widow in order to draw 2 cards. So we'll go over to my opponent. It's interesting that they did attach the weakness guard energy onto the active Ordinal. While it does protect against their weakness, so we're not able to hit for a fighting weakness on them, it's just very strange to see because you usually want to put your special energy onto your Necrozma so that you can actually deal extra damage. Although I suppose my opponent's line of thought here is they're going to be hitting weakness on some of our Pokemon anyway, so perhaps they just want to use the base damage on Necrozma to deal 200 with the weakness. We'll have to see. And of course, with this Ordinal here, it is dealing 30 damage, and then they get to heal 30 damage from this Pokemon as well. So if we're not able to deal a whole lot of damage, they're going to be able to heal it as well. They do 30, so if we go ahead and do 30 back to them, they're just going to be immediately healing that, so there's no point in actually attacking with that attack, when we'd much rather just continue to draw cards here. Now we have the Sonia. I think we're going to have to get some energy this time around so that we have a couple of energy actually in our hands. That's another thing I found. Not only does this deck not have energy acceleration, it has no way of recovering energy, and it has very little ways of actually searching for energy. So just a lot of problems with this deck I've found, and the overall consistency of it is yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired, to say the least. Definitely a lot of decks I would rather be playing in Theme Deck format, but hey, there's a lot of cool Pokemon in it, and a lot of Pokemon from the current generation in Sword and Shield, so that's cool if you want to try out some of those Pokemon, pilot them, but you certainly won't be doing very well with the deck, unfortunately. You see my opponent attaching onto the Necrozma here, and they are going to be using the Malamar to use its Psychic Recharge ability and get extra Psychic energy onto that Necrozma. Powers it up much more quickly I should say, and yeah, just again with that point of energy acceleration, my opponent has it, we do not, so they're able to get even just that one extra energy into play every turn, or when a Pokemon gets knocked out, they can recover that Psychic energy which was on that Pokemon. So very strong being able to have that as an option in Theme Deck format, and it's just something that you can't go without if you want to do well and succeed in this format. See my opponent using the Ordinal here as well, is able to draw a card for them when it's in the active spot, and they also get the heads on the Bug Catcher, which is going to draw them an additional 4 cards. So 5 cards off the top of their deck, that's pretty powerful. We certainly wish we had some options like that. All we have available to us at the moment is the Bird Keeper. So we do have the double Pokemon Catcher at least, so I could always go out and hopefully we get heads on one of those and bring up the Necrozma. We do know that my opponent just get a Necrozma out of their deck as well with that Mysterious Treasure, so not the best to go in because they will have a response, but it's overall going to be the best option I feel like here, being able to deal damage onto that Necrozma and get it out of play. And then at least we have the Pseudo Widow as a backup attacker later as well. So let's go with that. Hope that we get heads here. We get a tails, that is very unfortunate. Would have liked both of these to be heads, but instead they're going to be tails, so I guess we're not going to be dealing any damage onto that Necrozma this turn. We can also attack with our Pseudo Widow, and my opponent could hit into us again for the 90. That's kind of fine. They give us a smiley face because, yeah, obviously they didn't want us to hit heads on those Pokemon catchers either. But we'll go and hit into the Ordinal for 60 damage. They are removing their weakness, as I mentioned. They do have 90 HP, so at least even with the heal of 30, we can get a knockout on them on this following turn. Although they may be retreating here. From the looks of things, most likely going into the Necrozma, or perhaps just continuing to attack into us. Of course, if they do go into the Necrozma, we have the response with our Sirfetch'd, although we don't really have anything beyond that. So we really need to get attaching onto our Powden next, as that is a big heavy hitter. that we can make use of for sure. You see my opponent hitting into this for 30 damage as I mentioned, and they also get the heal, and we will begin our attachment of energies onto Hippowdon. Like here, it's going to be a pivotal point in the game. Since we can get the knockout on this Audino, my opponent is going to be forced to bring up another Pokemon to hit into us. I'm kind of hesitant on using this Bird Keeper as we are forced to switch. It's not really something that I want to do, and nor is that. I certainly just misclicked, and yeah, that's not good for us at all. We're going to be going down prize cards now, and that is not going to be helping our case whatsoever. Don't do that at home. Definitely try not to misclick, because that's going to cost you some prize cards like it just did for us. So yeah, you hate to see it. Now we're going to be forced, if we want to go in with our Sirfetch'd, then my opponent's going to get a response knockout with the Necrozma, and it's most likely just going to go downhill from there. We'll promote the Hippowdon so we can make use of one of these Bird Keepers. We do get into the Turbo Patch, so we can always use that and hopefully we get an energy. I'm going to be putting down the Stonejourner, so if we do get a heads, we can put it onto the Stonejourner here, which we do get, which is nice. Then we'll also use Bird Keeper here to switch our Pokemon, draw 3 cards, and I'm going to be attaching onto the Stonejourner once again. I think that's going to be fine, although actually the Hippowdon overall is a better attacker, since we can do 150 for 4. That is more efficient than the Stonejourner, and we already have an energy on the Hippowdon as well, so we might as well continue to attach there. And then we'll just use Meteor Assault on our Sirfetch'd in order to get the knockout on our opponent's Audino, taking a fighting energy off of the prize cards. And of course here is my opponent's Necrozma coming in for the response knockout. They are dealing 100 damage, but we do have the psychic weakness which I spoke about earlier, and that is going to get them the knockout. Being able to deal 200 damage is certainly more than enough to get a knockout on us. So there is the second Inkay coming down rather than the Necrozma, and they are attaching to it as well, which is interesting. And they do have the powered up Malamar as well on their bench. So looking to not promote any colourless Pokemon from the looks of things. And for some reason my opponent opts to not knock us out. Not really sure why they've done that. They are reducing damage with the first attack there, I believe. Yeah, they're taking 30 less damage, but for some reason they chose not to get a knockout on us. So this is going to be a great opportunity for us to make a comeback. We have the switch as well as the Bird Keeper, so we can attach an energy. We do have to use our switches here, since Meteor Assault makes it so we can't use it on the following turn. So we're going to have to use our switches for sure. So we'll Bird Keeper into the Hippowdon, and then we're going to switch back into the Sirfetch'd. Of course we could have attacked with the Hippowdon there, but considering that the Sirfetch'd already has damage on it and is weak to Psychic, I want to make use of this Sirfetch'd as much as possible and try and protect our Hippowdon, since it is a pretty big beefy Pokemon that can take a hit. Here my opponent is promoting the Inkay, perhaps just using it as a pivot, but they are evolving it into Malamar, so perhaps not retreating and just getting some additional usage out of that Psychic Recharge ability. And they do also get into the Silvally here, so it could be a useful Pokemon for them, but again, it is a colourless Pokemon, so it is weak to fighting, and it's going to be easier for us to get a knockout, although some of our weaker attacks that only deal a little bit of damage for 1 or 2 energy. They are going to be retreating though. Then they also use their Psychic Recharges, and they're going to be dealing a total of 60 damage, but with weakness that is up to 120 damage, which is enough to get a knockout on our Sirfetch'd, and then we can come in here with our Hippowdon and get a big knockout on this Malamar. Taking out one of the Malamars from my opponent is going to be crucial for really picking apart their deck, making it so that they have less energy acceleration options here. Can't quite remember if my opponent plays any form of recovery, something like a Rescue Stretcher would really help them out in order to recover some of those Pokemon. Can't remember if the deck plays it yet, so we'll have to see what they have. They may just run out of attackers here. We see them getting the Necrozma back out of the deck, and they are going to be putting it into play this time. And they do finally go for that attack, dealing 120, getting the knockout. And here we can promote our Hippowdon. We could always try our hand and try and flip some coins, but we're just going to go for the guaranteed attack and a knockout, since we can deal 150. And we also just want to make kind of a look at our hand and see what our options are. I think making use of Bead here to accelerate energy onto our Stonejourner is going to be a good option, and we're going to take this opportunity to do that since we don't really need anything else from the hop, say. And we've also got our Turbo Patch, unfortunately getting a Tails this time, so we're not able to make use of that too much. Could always put down a second Stonejourner if we wanted to, but I don't think we're going to be able to get that powered up just yet, so we'll just continue to attach to the one that we have, and we use our Hippowdon to get the knockout, dealing 150 damage and taking our third prize card of the game. So even with that misclick that I made, perhaps my opponent did the same thing and misclicked when they went to attack with their Necrozma earlier, because that's really cost them a whole bunch of damage as well as a knockout, and it's made it so that we can swing this game back in our favour for sure. They do have that second Necrozma, so they're attaching onto it, and they can use the Psychic Recharge, so that we'll be ready for the following turn. I only need one more energy to get going. But beyond these two Pokemon, it might be difficult for my opponent to really get some big attacks off here. Interesting that they're looking to protect their Malamar, so they want to keep the Psychic Recharge around as much as possible. Definitely makes sense. And they're going to be hitting us for 30 damage and reducing damage by 30 as well. But seeing as this Necrozma does have 130 hit points, that will be able to save them, since of course 150 minus 30 goes down to 120, so we're just out of range of getting a one-hit knockout, which is a bit unfortunate. We'll be attaching onto our Stonejourner, of course, as well as using Hop, which has got a lot more Pokemon, so you can see that this deck does have a lot of Pokemon in it. It's kind of a problem when you want to actually find energy and trainer cards and you're just not able to do so as a result. But we will just keep hitting into our opponent. We don't really have any reason not to. I suppose we could try and hope that we get 2 heads off of the first attack. We might as well. I mean, there's no reason not to. We'll play it big, hope for the best. There we go, we get the double heads on our first attack. That is going to be the exact damage that we need in order to get a knockout on our Necrozma. So there you go, you just have to sometimes take a risk in the Theme Deck format, and if you take those risks, they will pay off for you. And we're able to get the knockout on one of our opponent's main attackers of this match up. Really not playing, and my opponent's really not playing to their deck's strengths, I would say. Yeah, they're able to keep the Psychic Recharge on Malamar around, getting energy accelerated is great, but they're really putting themselves in a bad position here, and they've left the Malamar in the active spot, so this is a fantastic opportunity for us to come in here and actually get a victory. Although even with the fact that we're taking all these prize cards and we're looking like we're going to win this game, it has been extremely slow, so I would say with a kind of word of caution that this is a rare case for this deck, and you're not going to often see this deck beating a Psychic, Necrozma and Malamar deck, never mind the top tier decks like the Charizards and the Dragonites and all of those. So we'll take these wins when we can get them for sure, and it looks like we're certainly going to do it for this game. My opponent just promoting the, what is this, Azelf or Mesprit. Again, the 3 legendary Pokemon, they all look similar, but they all work together, so they promote the Mesprit attack. Not going to be enough since we can just deal 150 to take our final prize card, and that is going to wrap it up for the Sirfetch'd deck. It was fun being able to use this deck and show it off for sure, but as I spoke about, it's definitely not the most effective deck, nor the fastest. So use it at your own will. If you're going to be frustrated with it, then that's up to you, your choice. Certainly better theme decks out there, but I hope you enjoyed this video nonetheless. I'll see you in the next one.